Hello there, everybody, and I hope you can all hear me and that this stream is working flawlessly and amazingly as we embark on Dragon Knight Ask Me Anything 2. Yes, in honor of our sacred Kickstarter. So let's just take a quick look at the YouTube page and see that all our shit is working okay. Because usually it's not. Yeah, let's put in a little video description. That sounds like a good idea. It sounds like something we should do. There we are. We've got a link there to the Kickstarter, which is in the video description below. And today I'm going to be thanking all the wonderful folks that have supported our campaign so far, and also just answering more questions about our horror fantasy film, as well as just talking about fantasy in general as well, and horror as well. If you've got some horror, questions to ask, then that is totally awesome as well. So let's get things started. Save some tags there. It's looking good. Yeah, I'd say we're about ready to go. Now, let's have a look. Let's get the chat window open so I can hear all you guys. Okay. Give me a hello if you have joined me for chat as well. If only so that I have an idea that this is all working fine. Great. Now to share the link on our Facebook page and Twitter, because of course we want no one to be spared the fate of listening to me talk about fantasy films for a little while and Dragon Knight. So on Facebook, let's say, hey folks, why not join me for an Ask Me Anything on Dragon Knight 2 live streaming right now. That sounds good, right? Yeah, of course it does. There we are. Great. Yeah. And I've managed to pick a thumbnail for the video that isn't too obnoxious looking, so that's good, right? Okay, and then we'll just tweet this as well, I think. Yeah, cool. Put that out in the Hex Horror Twitter account as well. Be like, hey guys, come and hang out with us. And put that out in the Hex Arcana account as well for our publishing company. That's awesome. And I'll also put this out in the Channel Hex Facebook group in case any of you guys aren't familiar with that. We actually do have a Facebook group. Just type in Channel Hex and join it. And if you're not a trader in cryptocurrencies, which seem to be all the people we're getting at the moment, then I can add you to that. Right. I'd say we're about ready. Yeah. Okay, live chat. So if you're joining me, please shout me a little hello as well. I'd love to hear your little chat voices and know who is lurking there right now. Okay, I think we're about ready to get started with our amazing. I tell you what, let's post this in the Scottish Facebook filmmakers group as well, because I always manage to piss off at least one filmmaker from that group unintentionally, and I feel it would be a shame not to maintain that tradition. So let's have a look. Doop. And if you're watching right now, please do share our live stream as well, because there are hundreds, perhaps thousands of attractive young women who would love a chance to see this 40-year-old man talk about low budget fantasy filmmaking. So can't let them miss that on a Thursday evening, can we? No. Okay. So if you have a question about Dragon Knight, or about any of our horror films or anything, then please feel free to ask on the live chat. I have a little window right over here, so this should all work flawlessly. Excellent. Great stuff. Okay. And okay, hello everyone. And that's me just type that in the group. Awesome. Right. So I am going to be, oh, hi Bruce Todd. Bruce Todd says, yo. Bruce Todd. Yo. Right back at you. I hope you're having a very nice Thursday evening. I am, because I've got a nice cup of coffee here, which will help me survive. Thank you, Bruce. Yes, the campaign is nearly there, but you know, these things are very unpredictable, and until you pass the finish line, geez, you have no idea. Today we have made about £100, and then, you know, another day it might be over £1,000. There's just no way to know, and so every pledge is really important. Hi, Luke. Luke G says hello, and it's always a pleasure to see you there, my friend. And it's great, you know, that we're building a community here with Channel Hex as well, and it's always just such a, I guess, a kind of reassuring pleasure, you know, to see the same familiar faces poke in and say hello. Thanks, Luke. Luke says we're doing a good job with the Kickstarter, and we really appreciate that. You know, it's exciting because it's a different kind of film. We love dark fantasy, horror, and it's an interesting new project, something that we hope to build into an epic universe. Don't worry though, we're not going to be neglecting our horror films, because, you know, I am, you know, a blue-blooded horror fan to the core, so we will be doing that as well as these horror-themed fantasy projects as well. And so, yeah, if you have any questions about fantasy films or our horror films, or you just want to say yo, hello, and whatever, then damn right, blast your comments straight to me. And now we shall go through the great list of pledge thank yous as well. So this is something that I promised to do. So let's have a look. Andrew Hasford, thank you. Nancy Cooper, my mother, pledged, thank you. Mint Fox, which sounds like a cool kind of like code name, you know, maybe for like a pilot in Top Gun. Mint Fox, yeah, it's good with ladies. Mint Fox. Then we have Joha Pakinen, thank you. And apologies in advance for the mispronunciation of everyone's names. And if it's any consolation, I often struggle to pronounce my own name correctly as well. So you will not be alone in sharing in embarrassment should I mispronounce your name, because it is an anguish I've lived with every day of my life as I try to say Laurie Brewster, but I can't say Laurie Brewster without going brrr. It's a terrible thing. George Komotsos, thank you so much. Jenna Swisher, James Wagner, Lucas Wagner, Kevin, Toddy Walnuts, Steve Hergina, Simon Sturt, Greg Kirkpatrick, Mike Beattie, Roger Strahl, Edward Drummond, Adam Ragg, and Thomas Poltrygeist Richardson. Thank you so much, folks, for your support. And we also have Cody Sweetser, Kevin Williams, James Porter, Richard Southard, Spencer Booth, Bruce Todd as well. Thank you so much. Andrew Ionides, Neil Burley, Roj Whitelock, who's a great photographer in London. And we also have Kerry and Sophie Clifton, David Rains, Richard Neary, Matthias Hansen, Denise, Thomas McHugh, Tony Finnan, Mad Hatter, Roger Strahl, Alison McInnes, John Evans, Tharbeard, Megan Sims, Vasilios Melahores, Nikki Martin, Christopher Gannon, Sophie Hall, Eric Karen, Enda Coyle, Robert M. Stover. All of them ex-romantic partners of mine during the 80s, and it's so nice to see them all come together to help support the latest Kickstarter campaign for Hex Studios. Just a little joke there. Ashlyn Borrell, Paul, Andy W, Andy Burns, thank you Andy Burns, Dan Ross, and Jason Feigles, AJ Saxby, which is a good name. Sounds like the kind of name that a horror pulp fiction writer would have had in the 1980s, you know, with the cool kind of painted book covers. You know, AJ Saxby, an occult adventure by AJ Saxby. Sounds good. Travers Clearman, Jesse Gardner, Daniel Pagoda, Julian Carrington, who has a wonderful habit of growing microgreen vegetables with Leon Carrington in the village of Dysart. Little baby onions, which I've eaten, and they're very yummy and very nutritious. Justin Hayward, who is a wonderful actor based in London, and it is an incredible thing when actors who I know have no money at all take the generous step to support independent film. And Justin Hayward recently was in the Lockdown Hauntings as well, and he did a fantastic job in that film, as did Megan Tremethick, who is also in that horror film as well. So Justin Hayward, thank you so much. I know you're already living on a diet of super noodles as an actor, forced to boil the soles of old boots to make your own black coffee, and for you to support Dragon Knight means there is no excuse for anyone that hasn't pledged yet not to click the link in the video description and pledge at least $1 or £1. John Ryan, Andrew McLaren, Alan Osgood, and Zebediah Duran, Gavin Hugh, who is a filmmaker in my hometown as well. Gavin, hello. Astrad Villarreal, and Cody Sweetser, Nadia Heller, Peter F. Mahoney, Tinderlocks, Stephen Hardy, James Oxley, who is one of our oldest supporters, as some of you watching right now will have been, and from perhaps our first film, Lord of Tears, as well. So thank you so much, James. Kitsume, Megan Mata, Neil Fraser, who's very awesome poster artist, who actually did the poster for Dragon Knight, very kindly supporting our film as well. Neil Fraser is an artist whose work you can check out on Twitter and Instagram as well. Really good poster artist. Michael Hardy, Reno Anastasio, Stephen Kerr, who is an actor as well, who I normally have playing creatures in loincloths. In fact, if any of you are fans of For We Are Many, the horror anthology, and you can remember the demon at the end that does the little dance with the flute, Stephen Kerr. And we have Tim, Matthew Hall, Jason Sherraw, and Callum Payne. Callum is one of our old supporters as well. And Petros Protopapis, and Stacey O'Shea, Lynn Marie Panzerino, Justin Ryan, Tim Easley, Rough Knight, Kevin L. Knott, Richard Pate, Chris Sharp, Brendan McDonnell, a familiar face, Trevor Thorpe Kildson, Tom Staunton, Regan, Jason Wagner, Sean McFedris, Roger Van Land, Lapis Wolf, Cable, Andrew Knight, Julia Morgan, and who is someone that has taken a lot of her free time to support not just us, but many horror filmmakers on social media, just by sharing tweets and really going out their way to get the voice of independent artists out there. We have Brad G and David Ray, and we have Paul Huckstep, Alex Conway, Judgment Dave, Mara Krim, Steve Paul Smith, Alexander Churchyard, Giacomo Tesse, who sounds like a cool character from a Giallo film, Chris, Josh Scheib, Roseanne Musser, Burgett, who is a great supporter of all our fantasy ideas and ambitions, and is a big fantasy fan herself. Todd Slosby, Dan Martin, Tim Hutchison, Marcus Dietrich, Philip Ryan Strown, Pete Martinez, Galabar, who sounds like a dictator that rules the planet Venus 3,000 years from now, Andreas Kalazar, perhaps the name of his futuristic prime minister, Ant O'Reilly, Neil Leddy, Kevin Williams, Ronnie Hines, Andy McKeague, Delta U Hobbit, Ben McCormack, and Roger Strahler, I've said already, Matthew Sumner, Magnus Wake, thank you Magnus, Magnus is a filmmaker as well, Stephen Corral, Janet, Creepy Prowley, Corey Bevel Q, Adam Brown, Zach Kanoff, Wanda M. Dobbs, Alan Stephen, John Dangle Lamas, Colin Hamilton, Drew Johnston, Dario Remo Cardinale, Gordon Drybra, Darrell Hedrickler, Mark McAuliffe, Chris Morris, Peter Ritson, Jim Dowell, Ryan Kellner, and Hans Johansson. Oh, Irish name, beautiful Irish name that I always mispronounce. Rosha McCormack? Or, yeah, I think that's it. It's like Royson McCormack. If you know the proper pronunciation, please tell me. I think it's Roshan or Rosha. What is the correct pronunciation of Royson? Here we are. This is the best question. James Ollie, Eric. James Ollie, kindly pledging, is actually the sculptor and artist who designed the miniatures, the 28mm Games Workshop scaled miniatures for Dragon Knight, which I absolutely adore. And he's a great artist. Bob Wally, his father, thank you Bob. Eric Riley, Vera Koenig, Kate Linney, Brian Matthews, Robert Ricard, Aileen McFarlane, Jean-Luc, Winston Cow, Kevin Lawrence, Mitchell Spears, and yep, Bruce Todd is admitting defeat in the correct pronunciation of Rosha. Kevin Lawrence, Mitchell Spears, Thomas Eugene Otterman, Russell Moore, D. Aside, Tim Berry, Ben McNeil, Kimo Kipe Varasco. Callum, W25 says the correct pronunciation is Roshin or Roshin. Thank you, Callum. You are totally correct. That is right. That's totally correct. So Roshin McCormack is the correct pronunciation, and thank you so much for your support. And see, where did we get to? Mickey K, Michael D. Salvo, Lewis Norris, and Leslie Ann Kiriyama, Eric Redman, who's a fantastic studio actor from Germany. Thank you, Eric. Teresa Darwin, Hans Peter Herk, Andrew Gurley, who is actually in the cast of Dragon Knight, thank you. You know, one of the most incredible things you can do when you are an actor in a film that is going to have crowdfunding support is, you know, supporting the film. It's such an incredible thing. Filmmakers don't expect that, but when they get that, it sends such a powerful message to say just how much you care about the project's success. And no filmmaker ever forgets the actors who they know have little money, who come out to support projects like that. So thank you very much, Andrew Gurley. He plays the role of Prince Torsten in Dragon Knight, and he's a great actor. Christopher Goodwin, Matthew Lund, SR01, Greg Orsay, A Persity, Freddie Primo, Dragon's Roost Press, Stephen Sullivan, Greg Day from who is one of the 4 horses of the apocalypse that run Fright Fest. How amazing is that, to get the support of Greg Day from Fright Fest? Thank you so much, Greg. And Fright Fest is an incredible horror film festival, and I don't think it needs any introduction, folks. I think you all know what that is. Gavin Brian Tansley, who's a VFX artist based in my hometown of, based in a town close to my hometown called Glenrothes. Andrew Welch, Philip Curran, Rob Duncan, and Lena. Thank you, Lena. Lena's a real sweetheart from Germany and a good friend of Sarah Daly, the writer of Dragon Knight. Alistair Bow, Sam, Nick Ford, Karsten Richard, Terry Adams, Christina Doxlader, Mike Marunchak, Robert Kostner, Lars Steenberg, JB, Edward Drummond, Emily Knutson, Gordon Holiday. Emily Knutson, incidentally, is also an artist who performs as a spectral ghost and banshee in the Dragon Knight. Thomas Handling as well, who is a warrior in Dragon Knight. Thank you. Gordon Holiday, also known as Gordy, great actor from Glasgow. Colin Prunty, Nick Miles, Eric Vincelli, Claudia Mattox, Bobby Kenneth Lapierre. Good to see you there, Kenneth. Alexander Joyner, again, thank you so much. Jason Cato Vandrere, Zach, Aaron Ratke, Ryan David Orr, Stuart Allen, Richard Feidler, Charles C. Hickenbotham, which is a fantastic name. Sounds like the name of a villain in an Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes novel, don't you think? Andre Van Melo, Nikki Coppola, Eamon Daly, Gary Grice, David Chamberlain, Thomas Wolfe, Michelle Tremethick, a relative, no doubt, of Megan Tremethick, one of our wonderful artists in the film, Minoru Toda, Peter L. Brown, Hanaj Bang Benz, who is a fantastic actress and model based in Glasgow, Abby Brunsdorf, Linda Grant, Marcus Luft, Kyle, Terry, thank you so much, Kyle. He's been one of our strongest supporters over the years. Terry Rumbold, Daniel Senior, Adrian Nunn, Robert Tay, James Moss, Sarah Morningstar, Brian Villagast, Patrick Boggs, Magsam, Wade C. Harrison III, which is from a long line of monarchic rulers, and we have Therese Tagulet, Mitch Wilson, David Gain, who runs a festival in Germany, Johan Ingo Albertson, Darren Trapp, Jordan Monks, John McCrone, Johan Kallstrom, Tony S, Ghost Cat, Fiona Clark, Matt, Pete John, Jesse Carman, Robin Schumacher, Thomas, Grabnash, who sounds like the name of an orc warlord, Arandius, John Osmond, Jeff G. Turner, Mark Lumen, Ronald L. Weston, Matt Orifice, thank you so much, Matt, and James L. Perkins, Ron Dvansky, one of the best US attorneys you can find in Florida, Simon Forrester, Nick Williams, Robert Hood, Cody Van der Hergen, Paul Korber, Stevie D55, Maria MS, Tyson Poe, Karsten Peters, and Jodie MacArthur, who is a sweetheart based in their local town, Glenrothes, as well, aspiring filmmaker and horror fan. George McHugh, Phil Akrell, George Lynch, John Devine, Rel Na Dekvant, Mary Connell, Tobias Gasser, or Gasser, should I say, Quinn Hansen, Brian, Michael, 1978, Andre Simeon, Paul Motzuk, Morton Wisting, who's a dear friend, supporter of ours, Greg Kirkpatrick, Gareth Jones, again a long-time supporter, Chris Simons, Charles Dowd, Megan Tremethick, who stars as Jigme in Dragon Knight as well. Again, as I mentioned before, it's such an amazing thing when the actors in a film support the producer's efforts on a crowdfunder and a Kickstarter, because we know actors, out of anyone, are forced to eat the leather from other men's shoes to survive. It's a hard life, very hard life. Michael Norman, Tenmoy Chang, Gordon J. Miller, who is, again, another actor in Dragon Knight. Thank you so much, Gordon. Matthew Fountain, Chris Douglas, Isla Christie, and thank you very much for Isla, who's an old friend of mine from high school. Juan Fernandez, Kevin J. Thomas, Brian Holst, Arne Sorley, Luke Goddard. Hello, Luke. See, your name came up. Who's with us in the chat right now, I think. Winston M. Harris, Frodo, Craig Seath, Simon Page, James Jacob, Primal, Hans Adams, Semiela, Nikolai Popsky, Adam Wakeling, Stuart Eshen, Joe Biggs, Simon Ball, Travis, Hanover Fist, Hey, Lena again, and David Massey, Steve Sullivan, Layart, George McHugh, Robert Stevens, Mark Skinner, James Lofran, Peter Fitchett, Ross Hardy, Gavin Rye, Vanishri Thapile. Thank you so much. Vanishri is an actress as well, who came to one of our social events, and she's a very, very lovely lady, whom we look forward to seeing again when we can run events, as this COVID nightmare comes to a conclusion. And I also look forward to inviting all of you who are watching right now to events such as Hex Film Festival type events and get-togethers where we can hang out and eat pizza or cakes or both and watch our horror movies and other films and hang out. Fraser Kirkland, George Casper, Christopher H. Svara, Lisa, Samuel Falkingham, Alien Nex, Brooke H., Will Morton, James Mika Spraggs, James C. Ward, Tim Knight, Libby, Leidenkempt, Burnt Wolf, Christine Rafferty Allen, mother of Bryony Monroe, who is a wonderful actress in many films based in Glasgow, who plays a great part in Dragon Knight, and whom you might remember from The Black Gloves as our young victim at the start of the film at the Sea Cliff, who meets her sticky end at the hands of the Chatterer, or the Nicholas Vince who plays him. The Marquis Ondor, Tam Perry, and Janet Doughty Dillingham, and Niall McMahon, should I say, Balky, Travis J. Good, who is one of our longest, one of our most passionate supporters as well. I mean, you all are. You know, we appreciate all of you. You're all part of our Hex family. Travis, though, I shout out to you because you're doing some, great sharing and enthusiasm. Campbell Stewart, Kimberly Spivey, Martin Unsworth, who is a journalist and editor as well with Starburst magazine, a great guy, and a good friend. Dave Dampier, Christopher Corbett, Philip McInnes, Paul Cardulo, Hernani Dillandro, Mick, Hengst 2404, Jonathan McLean, Stuart Stillborn, James Moss, Seord Kinkenberg, Aaron Wayne Freeman, Thomas Kozlowski Jr., Rachel James, Dihajer Anod, which I do apologise for mispronouncing, Paul Huckstep, Jose Luis Martinez Diaz, and John Cohorn, a filmmaker whom I've known for many, many years, who I need to catch up with, whom I used to chat with on the DVX user film forum. So these are the wonderful folks whom I would like to express our deep, deep thanks to at the moment for their generous support. God knows without it. Oh, I think we've just had another support just come in there from Eric C as well. Thank you, Eric. That is, freaking awesome, right? That's great. Yay. Slowly but surely, we are marching to victory. Let's take a moment to consider, ladies and gentlemen, and is there any ladies here with us this evening? If so, please let us know in the chat. In the chat. But let's because we're going to have a moment. We're going to sit by the fire and have a chat. What we're trying to do with Dragon Knight is remarkable. We are, well, there we are. Folks, we've just had a hi there from one of the stars of Dragon Knight, Megan Tremethick. Say hello, boys. So what are we trying to achieve with Dragon Knight? You think about it. Is it just a film? Is that it? Because there's a decent amount of low-budget fantasy films. Perhaps not nearly as many as there are horror films, but there are a few. What sets Dragon Knight apart? What is our ambition? Why even make this? I have always, as a horror filmmaker, been fascinated by man's propensity to commit evil. And I say man in general term for humanity. Fantasy gives us a chance to examine those aspects, those abilities, that can drive people to do evil things in a setting where we can create our own civilizations and our own conditions for war and conflict, and combine the psychology that drives people towards evil with expressions of that emotional urge with things like supernaturalism and even magic. Now, that's not to say that we're making a film that has blue fireballs and things like that. Our Dragon Knight is quite gritty in its depiction of violence and war, and also with how the supernatural and magic works. Furthermore, though, it's not a nihilistic film either. So it's not to say that when I describe it as gritty and explores ideas of wars and man's inhumanity to man, that it revels in those qualities. There is darkness, there is horror, but we have a film that also has heroes. You remember how in Lord of Tears and in The Unkindness of Ravens, that even though things looked bleak and pitch black, there were still heroic qualities and motivations driving our characters to fight the forces of evil. Especially the case with The Unkindness of Ravens, with the character of Andrew Burns and his battle against the Raven Warriors, or as the lore tells us, the so-called Servants of Annihilation. Luke G has a question here and asks whether Dragon Knight has medieval influences. Yes, it absolutely does. And I'm going to try and tell you this without sounding too much like an enormous nerd, Luke, because I am something of a fan of history. I studied ancient history and modern history at St Andrews University, which is a bit like Scotland's Hogwarts, as well as theology as well, in the study of religion and ancient religion as well. So in terms of history and medieval history in particular, these things are fiercely alive and well in the world we've created for Dragon Knight. The kind of medieval influences stem from the kind of I would say, maybe about the late 11th century kind of conditions, and partly the 12th century, and a time where the kind of fairly early feudal kingdoms, they were forming. They were becoming political and centralized. It wasn't the Dark Ages as it's sometimes referred to. You were moved on from that. We are in a continent where the land is dominated by a number of fragmented human kingdoms that are ruled by kings who are effectively subjugated as puppets to an emperor that rules in a civilization to the south of the continent that takes inspiration from the latter Roman Empire. I say the later kind of Christianized empire that was in history beset by constant barbarian invasions and on the brink of collapse. Our epic saga assumes that these leaders of this crumbling empire, in an attempt to retain their domination of the continent and over these human kingdoms as well as puppets, makes a pact with an evil force that we will come to see as Abaddon, the villain in Dragon Knight. As things unravel further and as the continent descends into civil war and war, we will see more supernatural deities rise from the abyss as folks make pacts, prepared to risk anything in an attempt to win the conflict. And during so, we will learn the origin story of the Owlman, as well as the Raven Warriors, or Servants of Annihilation. And we'll get to see them alive in this this kind of prehistory that perhaps predates our own by tens of thousands of years, or perhaps as a fantasy world all of its own. But in any case, it will give lore and a richness to our villains. Thank you so much, Stuart McConnell. Stuart McConnell has very kindly just pledged as we're talking right now. And, I just, from the heart, Stuart, every pledge makes a difference. And thank you so much. And for folks watching as well, it doesn't matter if it's £1, $1, or whatever. Whatever it is, it helps the campaign get seen, really, based on Kickstarter. But anyway, let's get back to this story, this war. So we come to the Dragon Knight, okay? And maybe that's the wrong name. That's the name that we're going with at the moment. But Callum asks if Aberdeen was the villain. Abaddon is the villain, but Aberdeen could be a villain. Aberdeen being known as the concrete jungle, which is a city to the north of Scotland, which is quite funny. So we have this land that is facing the prospects of war. So the human kingdoms take medieval inspiration, and our empire to the south, which is the base, you could say, of Abaddon and his villains, as it were, is an empire to the south. It is also humans that live there, but they are living with the pact that they've made with these strange and dark forces that have come to have sway and influence over them. So we come to Dragon Knight, and Dragon Knight refers to an order of knights that were the one-time protectors of the continent. You can imagine them a little bit like the Knights of the Round Table. They would have been an elite force that was not biased towards any one kingdom or civilization, and whose power and independence was made possible based on their ability to work cooperatively with the dragons. And as you can imagine, by standard fantasy lore, creatures of great power. And as such, they maintained a balance that once existed and helped to maintain a relative peace between either the kingdoms and the empire, or perhaps even a single empire, as it probably was in the, shall we say, in the first age, if we're to use Tolkien references. So in our movie, we have just a bit of information about the idea that Abaddon emerges from the south, this mysterious force. In the trailer, it almost suggests that the black armored warrior we see with the face is Abaddon, but it's not. The Abaddon that is the villain is not an obvious force. It's a pernicious and pervasive energy that drives people to evil. But those figures with the faces that look monstrous and powerful are something like the Nazgul for Abaddon. They are his generals and his commanders. Now, in the trailer, funnily enough, I do the voice of one of those, in the film are called Saskaks, which is a Hungarian word for like cockroaches, these enemy commanders. But in fact, I don't do the voice for these guys in the movie. The voice actually sounds very different in the film. The voice of the Saskaks are actually almost androgynous, and they're voiced beautifully by Eric Redman, who is a wonderful character actor from Germany and performs in Captain America, the First Avenger, and Overlord, the recent horror film as well. And he gives a strange, effeminate, and viciously creepy and unsettlingly deadly voice, which is very different to the kind of voice that I did for the trailer. Unfortunately, we just couldn't get Eric's line ready in time for that. But I really like the Saskaks. They sound almost beautiful, but they're terrifying, black armored nightmares from hell. They're pure nightmare fuel. And Eric's voice gives them justice. So yeah, you'll get used to hanging out with these these, let's call them sons of bitches, because that's kind of what they are. They're really mean. Regan Walker has just joined us as well, who plays the role of Edwin. Hi there, Regan. And Regan, sorry, please correct me, Regan, I'm sorry. This is the fault of one of my crew who kept mispronouncing Regan and Regan, who also did the same mispronunciation of Megan and Megan, and that is Neil Cooper, who is the gaffer on our crew. Regan plays Edwin, who is an aspiring squire who serves Dragon Knight, and does an absolutely incredible performance that brings a little bit of heart and brevity to an otherwise dark and grim story. And the Dragon Knight himself, the titular character of the film, is someone who remembers the order that once existed of these knights and dragons who succumbed in a war against Abaddon centuries ago. And like Don Quixote, he wears the armor of the Dragon Knights, something that he's pieced together, and travels across the continent trying to inspire the kings who are subjugated to Abaddon to turn against them and rebel. And of course, he hasn't had much luck so far. But in the events of our film, we're going to see that change when Dragon Knight meets Edwin and eventually the character of Jigme, played by Megan Tremethick. Together, in the process of their meeting, they will uncover a prophecy that gives them hope that there might be, in fact, one dragon left that has been in hiding for centuries. And that could be their one hope to try and begin an inspiring rebellion that could actually give humans hope to try and fight against the overwhelming forces of evil that have dominated the continent for many centuries. So the first Dragon Knight will follow us on that basis, on the start of the war. I guess you could say A New Hope almost, if we were to use Star Wars terminology. But unlike the new Star Wars films, we have considered carefully what the actual story for Dragon Knight is from future films as well. So, and also let me add that this film is a complete film with a start, middle, and end. There's nothing I hate more in films, even if they are part of sagas that just end without there feeling like there's a proper closure. You know, like in Dragon Knight, there is closure, but in the second film, we will pick things up and continue with an epic narrative that keeps getting darker and more ambitious as we go along. And it will really test our characters, and perhaps, like a horror movie, you will wonder who might live or die, you know, during this war and this struggle that grows in intensity with every scene and every film. And now I'm going to sip my coffee, but please feel free to ask any more questions. Bruce Todd makes a hilarious point. If you are, like me, a very powerful, sexually confident man with a lot of life experience, and says Abaddon is actually the former captain of First Company Luna Wolves and current War Master of the Black Legion, which is a reference to the character of Abaddon as he is called in the Games Workshop game Warhammer 40,000. Now, I don't know, do we have any Games Workshop fans here? I have been known to purchase a few Games Workshop miniatures from time to time, just to, you know, keep, yeah. So, like, the Games Workshop miniatures have also inspired us to produce our own 28mm heroic scale figures, which are scaled to be compatible really with the Games Workshop's Age of Sigmar range of figures, or Warhammer Fantasy Battle for those who are more in the know. Bruce Todd says he has some Sisters of Battle that he needs to paint as well. Yeah, I think most of us who do have some Games Workshop miniatures have boxes which are yet unpainted, and I know I do as well. And mine are mostly of the Imperial Guard variety. Yeah, yeah. But don't let that put you off, any young ladies that are watching this video. Apart from that, I'm a very desirable man. So if we go to Luke G, you have a question as well, or a comment, should I say. I have a massive interest in medieval history in particular as well. So many political backstabbing and alliances made. Alliances only ever seem temporary. And yeah, quite right. It was, and this is not a statement you might all agree with. Some of you might disagree with this, but Game of Thrones at its height, I felt, mastered that aspect of history very well in an intriguing fantasy setting. The conniving alliances, treaties, and betrayals between the royal houses were something, engrossing and absorbing, perhaps more so than the existential stories, of the White Walkers or the Final Days type stuff. Similarly with Frank Herbert's books for Dune as well, that similarly have those kinds of qualities to them as well. I love the intrigue. It's not to say though that Dragonite is filled with scenes of people sitting at tables with maps, making treaties and deals. There is action, there is adventure, but those aspects, the political and the darker stuff, they are important, and they become more important as the story goes on, as the stakes become higher and the loss of life becomes, well, potentially greater in the conflict to come. And Bruce Todd is elaborating on my Imperial Guard collection of Games Workshop miniatures. To be fair, Bruce, I only have 11, because I used to have many figures when I was collecting them at high school. And in my early 20s, I still had an enormous amount of miniatures, really did. Mostly from trading them back and forth with all my friends at high school. However, there was an attractive secretary working for one of my clients when I was doing corporate videos back in the day. And she had a son, and he was really into Games Workshop miniatures. And so I cleverly thought I could donate the miniatures to the secretary's son and secure a romantic experience, perhaps, following dinner at a local Indian restaurant. However, my hopes were dashed as my organised dinner experience was cancelled at the last second, and only after I had donated all my Games Workshop miniatures, never to be seen or heard of ever again. Luke G says he agrees with my comments regarding Game of Thrones and political intrigues. As a native northerner, would-be Starkman, it fit very well with the culture and also influences of that region, the accents. But in the end, the houses only cared about themselves. That's right. And that's the big difference, isn't it, between the works of J.R.R. Tolkien and George R.R. Martin. They both examine different facets of humanity. Tolkien looks at what you could say are the idealistic aspects, the hopeful qualities that, against all odds, humanity could find redemption in the most vulnerable people of their ilk, the hobbits, and together, against incredible and overwhelming odds, triumph over evil and the fear and the risk of extinction and everything. And I think Tolkien does a fantastic job with that. And I thought Peter Jackson did a fantastic job with the original Lord of the Rings trilogies, especially the extended editions, for me personally. And it does, in aspects, look at man's propensity for self-service. You know, the equivalent of the houses looking after themselves in Tolkien could be Saruman, is perhaps the paradigm for that. You know, he of many colours, you know, of man's vanity, of man's ambition to try and profit at a time of survival or the risk of survival or even of extinction. So for George R.R. Martin, of course, the concerns are very different. It's, you could say, a more nihilistic, Friedrich Nietzsche style interpretation of fantasy storytelling. And very much so, the houses are all like narcissistic psychopaths, you know, ready to stab one another in the back for survival. I often sometimes wondered actually if, and this is just from the TV series, I've not read all of the George Martin books, whether, so all the houses would always have existed for centuries, but during this period of war, so many of the houses are completely destroyed in a manner that seems oftentimes quite sudden or arbitrary. I'm not sure if the books are like that, so in any case, it does paint a very realistic form of history, although I think as the television series went on, things seemed to be a little less realistic or that way inclined. Or at least realistic by the definition of the rules the narrative set originally in the series. But that's perhaps just me. But in any case, at its best, the intrigue and politics of those houses I thought was very sophisticated and seemed evocative almost of the kinds of plots and intrigues that the various houses, duchies and earldoms and baronies might have had within the Holy Roman Empire, you know, that has comprised of well, what's today's modern Germany, you know, when it was a medieval construct with almost 300 states, you know, forcibly stuck together. And it's fascinating. And with Dragon Knight and the saga, there's always that question, isn't there? Will it be more like Tolkien or will it be more like Martin? Because those are the two great pillars now, as I see it, of medieval style kind of fantasy, historical themed kind of fiction. If you think I'm wrong, guys, if you think I've missed any author that is right up there with Tolkien and George R.R. Martin, then please let me know in the comments. When I do think of Dragon Knight, I like to think of it as being, and this might sound like a cop-out, I hope it doesn't, but I try to draw a bit from both. I think it's important though that in drawing from both, that is actually more rare for it to be somewhere between the two rather than just swinging in with the nihilistic cynicism of George R.R. Martin. Because most modern fiction, even in narrative drama and even in horror, is overtly cynical and detached. You know, we're not supposed to feel emotions or be sentimental or have likable characters. Everyone's an asshole, everyone's complaining about everything around them, and it's like, I don't know. So no, there is hope in Dragon Knight, but there is pitch black darkness as well. And that is perhaps more transgressive now than, and more unusual than just trying to be cool for school, cynical for the sake of it, like some hipster with a peach flavoured vape. Fuck him, is what I say. Luke Chi says, or the Gondorian kings lured by the chance of ultimate power. Quite right. No, the kings of Numenor, if we have to go back to the Silmarillion as well. So, you know, exactly. And I find that interesting. And with Dragon Knight as well, I can imagine there being books that expand on the lore and the universe. You might think Dragon Knight is a name that's maybe a little bit cheesy for that. You know, it's a bit like Dragon Knight, you know, it sounds like Dragonheart, you know, is it like that kind of movie? It's not like that. It might not be the best name, it might not even stay that name, because the depth of the story and the themes are darker and more complex than that. But at the moment, that's our working name. It might become something : Dragon Knight, or it might stay Dragon Knight. Let me know in the comments what you think of the name. I'd love to hear what you guys think of the name. Callum says Dragonite sounds like Dragonite the Pokemon. Well, in that case, Callum, let me ask you this: what kind of name would you feel reflects the kind of story I'm describing? And don't get me wrong, I'm not asking for a specific name. That's very hard. That would take me days to think of. But if you can think of other examples that are already out there of the kind of things that you think evoke more the kind of quality or depth, then I would be very interested to hear what that is. And now it's time for another sip of this fine black coffee. If you are just joining us, feel free to check our video description, where we have a link to the Kickstarter for Dragon Knight as well. So far, we're working hard to get towards our total, and inch by inch, millimeter by millimeter, we are getting towards it. The start of a new and epic fantasy saga is not a mean feat, especially as we attempt to do things we've never done before, which are very exciting. For example, the modeling and animation of a 3D dragon, and have it look like an actual dragon, as well as battles with utilizing technology and animation from things like traditional things, like, you know, copying our soldiers using traditional techniques, green screen and blue screen. But the bigger challenges are actually, and the exciting possibilities, are coming from 3D crowd simulation technology, like the type they use in like Lord of the Rings with things like the Massive Engine and stuff like that. Michael Brewster, who is our VFX artist, you'll know him all from our Kickstarter videos, you've seen him from Channel Hex diary videos, is working with 3D modelers who have created perfect models of our costumed extras who play soldiers, and have been animating them so that they can march in formation, and be deployed in their hundreds in battle scenes. And the technology for that is just incredible. At the moment, he's working with 3D software known as Maya and FX Houdini, as well as a plugin called Golem, which is what we're using for the crowd simulation of our 3D characters. We also have a motion capture suit as well, which we're looking forward to using more of, that will let us produce more animations with an actor moving about and whatnot, that can be imported and then, you know, performed by our 3D characters as well. All of that combined gives us a chance to create stories that feature epic battles with hundreds of characters, combined with cinematography that would feature the kind of mid shots, you know, with our actors in armor fighting each other, and then the close-ups as well, which are remarkable technical feats for a modest production to achieve. Bruce Todd likes the name. He says Dragonite does what it says in the name of the tin. Callum says Tales of Edwin the Mighty. So Callum's obviously a fan of Edwin, who is our Squire character, and he is damn hilarious. And at times, quite heart-wrenching as well. He does some very powerful dramatic performances, Regan Walker, the actor. Bruce Todd also remarks that it's impressive as well that we are going mocap. And yeah, it is. To me, it is almost like magic. And I came originally from a VFX background, not a really advanced VFX background. I wasn't like, working for like, LucasArts or, VFX and everything like that. But the way that Michael has spearheaded Hex moving into really sophisticated VFX, which he's done from his own company called Cine Artiste, is really remarkable. And we're really excited at the possibilities as well. And when it comes to things like mocap and 3D, it's important to make the point that in no way are we fans of 3D cheese. Like, we are wanting to try and make things as best we can photorealistic and gritty, and realistic as well in the style of cinematography. So we don't like the idea of unrealistic camera work, where cameras swing down and fly through the open mouth of a dragon and go down his throat and everything like that. That kind of, let's call it Hobbit school of cinematography, if you guys know what I mean. We don't want, and we just want to try and create effects that are convincing enough and realistic enough and credible enough that you can enjoy them in the way they contribute to the story, not in a way that distracts you from the story with, let's say, bullshit spectacle, Instead, just good, straightforward storytelling. There's an army on the march. We see a good wide shot of an army in the march without the camera swinging through, flying around like an idiot and tracking through hundreds of guys under their legs. That kind of bullshit is not a case. Hi there, Daniel Senior, who pops along and asks a question. Daniel asks, probably a typical question, how has COVID affected the filmmaking process this time around? Well, COVID was a massive concern. We were lucky in the UK. We began filming and finished the main part of filming just before the second wave hit, which originated in the UK. And like the so-called Delta variant now, like from India, it was something that spread much faster and was causing quite a lot of deaths, and it started to explode just as we were wrapping up the main part of filming. But during the filming, we still had the normal variant and, every reason to be concerned. One of my associates' own parents had succumbed, and not on the crew, but someone we knew. And I think all of you will know someone or have known someone who knew someone who either sadly passed away or became very ill at the very least from this horrible virus. So we had the solemn responsibility when we were producing Dragon Knight to make sure that health and safety measures were in place as recommended and stipulated by because it was a Scottish film, by the Scottish Government. And so we did that. It basically involved lots of hand sanitizer, mask wearing, and this was something that everyone had to be on top of. But no one deserves greater thanks for the vigilance that kept people safe than my partner at Hex Studios, Sarah Daly, who is an incredible artist and wonderful, responsible and caring person. And throughout all of that, we were very lucky that no one became sick as a result of the time they spent in production for Dragon Knight. They were hurt in all other kinds of ways, physically and especially emotionally by me, but just not by COVID, which was a relief. And let's see, Thomas Kozlowski, who I thanked earlier for pledging towards Dragon Knight, asks, why do I feel like you're going to break out into MacArthur Park at any time? And if any of you are unawares of this, me and famous actor Richard Harris both performed MacArthur Park, very poignant song that some of you might know mainly as a disco song from Donna Summer, but actually was performed first by me and Richard Harris, which is available to view as a very beautiful music video at Channel Hex under the Hex Originals playlist. So be sure to check that out after this live stream. And sure, Thomas, when you experience such beauty and art like that, like my performance, it's only natural that when you look upon me, you might hope to be illuminated by that same beauty and radiance again. So I absolutely don't blame you. The real question is, will I be performing any other powerful songs and covers, such as Seal's Kissed by a Rose? Well, that's just something we'll have to wait and see. Thank you, Bruce. Bruce Todd says that he can confirm it was indeed art when I performed MacArthur Park, and not obscenity, as some of you might accuse me of. Well, folks, I think we're coming up to the end of our second Ask Me Anything. I would like to thank you all so much, and to our familiar faces as well. To Bruce, thank you so much. Luke, Callum, and to our actors as well, Megan Tremethick and Regan, who popped in, and Chris Hallett, hello, sorry we missed you earlier, and Stuart McConnell, hello there, sir, Daniel Senior, and Thomas Kozlowski, and I hope I haven't missed anyone out, but thank you all so much for joining me this evening, and of course, as usual, you know, when you get a chance, please, you know, share that Kickstarter link on Twitter and Facebook and let people know that we, all of us, me and you, we're all working together to achieve something impossible, to create our own fantasy horror epic. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a lovely evening, and I will speak to you all soon. Thank you and goodbye.